Hello and welcome to the Be Glad movement. My name's Pollyanna and I'm on a mission to bring you as many stories as possible of good coming out of bad and reasons to be glad. And today I'm joined by Ellie. Say hello, Ellie.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm going to get out of the way and let you get stuck in and start telling your story. Over to you.
Okay. Right. Well, my name's Ellie. And about 3.5 years ago, I had a breakdown, which was a whole range of things. At the time, it was thought that it was work induced, but as I went through counselling and therapy, we realised that my sort of mental health had been kind of compromised really pretty much all my life. And we could actually go back and pinpoint times as a child where my anxiety was really very, very pronounced. So it is something that I have lived with but not been diagnosed with all my life. But the diagnosis sort of 3.5 years ago was a real sort of, it was a massive life changer for me. So finally, there was a reason behind my bizarre thought processes, behind my excessive worrying, behind my manic reading in between the lines of everything that anybody writes or says or does. And I was able then to start being proactive in the way that I managed it. So what that started to give me back was a bit of control, which was something that I just hadn't had. All through sort of having my children, I had postnatal depression, but it was never particularly diagnosed. It wasn't ever treated. And I always thought that I could just crack on and deal with it myself. So reaching that really, really low point, that absolute dark moment, then actually gave me what I needed to actually start climbing that ladder to get myself out of that. The first thing I did was actually local to here, and I'm sure it's local everywhere, was the NHS. They put me through to the local Let's Talk people. And the first thing that they did was actually just put me on a 6-week course, and it was a learning course. It was nothing to do with counselling. I was having that alongside. And for me as an educator and someone who loves learning, it was absolutely fascinating to learn that all the physical attributes to anxiety and depression and stress are real and scientifically proven. So all those things like my repetitive strain injury, my neck issues, suddenly all the dots started to join up and this picture was being formed. So learning for me became really important, learning about what's actually going on in here, in this organ, and it is an organ.
Oh, I think I've lost you. Oh, there we are.
That was the thing.
Pardon?
I'll phone. Edit that bit out.
Never mind. Yeah, so you were just saying our brain is an organ.
Yes. Yeah. So learning about all that was really, really important to me. And it also started to give me strategies. Now, I've always been really into the outdoors. It's been something since a child, when I was a kid, going swimming in lakes and rivers was normal. It wasn't called wild swimming. It was just swimming.
Right.
And now it's called wild swimming, which my dad finds hilarious. So I've always been interested in it. And then when I had the breakdown, the doctors went through a whole series of things. I didn't go straight onto medication. It was something that I wanted to explore and manage myself. And I decided, I was walking up the side.
Oh, I think I've lost you. There we are.
Doctor wanted to get in touch with me. I was walking up the side of Skiddaw Mountain up in the Lake District with a friend. And I just thought to myself, I want to do this every day of my life because it just made me feel alive. It gave me space to think, space to reflect. And I do this something where I talk to myself, and they always say it's the first sign of madness if you talk to yourself. Well, I think if you have the ability to talk to yourself and have a conversation, then that to me is a real strength. And it's something that I now do every day. So since then, I have really immersed myself in the outdoors, and I've completely changed my career. So before, I was a textile designer for many years. I then went into teaching, university lecturing, and got up to senior management level. And that's kind of when I went pop, really. And so that's a complete switch now. I'm an outdoor education instructor. I'm a mountain leader. And I spend every day outside. And it's like my therapy room. It's amazing. So not to say that it always works. I've just actually come out of probably one of the darkest times that I've had in a long, long time. The Christmas and New Year period was very, very low, lower actually than before. I'd never, and since I was a teenager, had suicidal thoughts. But this New Year, Christmas and New Year, was the first time that happened. So that was a real kind of wake-up call for me. And so I've been working really hard since then to get myself out of that. So I decided, based on some research that I looked into a couple of years ago, that was done by Harvard University over in America, where they talk about the magic of just 15 minutes outside every day. And it's linked primarily to vitamin D, so sunshine, and how that benefits the body. I started to think, well, actually, for me, being outside is a really effective treatment alongside the medication I also take, which I wouldn't be without. And so now I've decided that this year I've given myself a challenge, and it's an easy challenge, which is literally for me to get outside for 15 minutes every day. So this is, I think, something that's, having spoken to a lot of people with mental health issues, is there's loads of things out there. It's like, come and join us and climb up this mountain. Come and join us and spend the day doing this. But there are times when I'm really bad, just getting out of the front door is, and I kind of think, well, if it's just 15 minutes, mentally, I know that I can deal with that much better. And I know that even if I just go outside, my phone I leave at home, and I just spend 15 minutes and walk around the block, or like, you know, you said, take the dog out for a walk for 15 minutes, but without the phone. Then when I get back, I've achieved something, and I can lie in bed at night and go, okay, today's been a bad day, but actually, what have I achieved? Well, I have done that. I've been outside for 15 minutes. And the thing is, it's like a drug, the outside, because of the endorphins and all those things that it does to you. You do become addicted, and suddenly that 15 minutes, the next day becomes 20, and the next day half an hour, and the next day it's an hour. And then I'm only 23 days in, and every day I wake up and the first thing I'm thinking is, what am I going to do today? Am I going to go for a walk here or there? Am I going to go for a cycle ride? Am I just going to sit in the garden for half an hour? And it really excites me, because I know that is one thing that I can achieve each day. So mentally, it's a really positive thing for me. So that's kind of where I've come from, and kind of where I'm heading, really. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much for sharing that. But I wanted to sort of quiz you a little bit, if you don't mind, and sort of ask you a little bit more about, you know, you mentioned that you were, excuse me, a textile designer before, and then which to me sounds like a wonderful job, and then you moved into teaching and up the ranks. And I think that sort of stuck in my mind a little bit, because quite often we can go down a career path, and the higher up that career path you get, you're not actually connected with what it was that you enjoyed about it in the first place. Is that what happened for you? Or?
Well, I think Have you seen the film Sliding Doors with Gwyneth Paltrow?
You know, I haven't actually.
And everyone who's watching should, because it's that whole thing of reaching a crossroads in life. And the film is about the fact that the doors open and she makes a conscious decision. So there's these two kind of running commentaries, one where she goes through the doors and one where she doesn't, and how her two lives pan out. And I can actually remember the exact sliding doors moment that I had, where I had to make the choice between going to the Royal College of Art to do my master's in printed textiles, which isn't an easy place to get into, or carry on in my career at the time, which was as an outdoor education instructor and in the outdoor industry. And I spent my life, and this is sort of to do with anxiety anyway, trying to please other people. And I always wanted everyone to look at me and go, oh, she's successful. So I chose the path that I thought was more glamorous. And I loved it. And you're right, what did happen was kind of, I worked as a designer. I did a degree. I then did my master's at one of the best art colleges in the world, and that still wasn't enough for me. I then went on to work with, and design for really top-end designers, and it was insane. But then children came along. But one of the reasons I went to the Royal College was because I've always wanted to teach, and there was a lecturer on my degree course, and I always used to think I want to be her. And so I went into teaching, and suddenly this kind of light bulb moment came on for me, and I thought, this is just magic. But you are absolutely right. You do get onto this kind of treadmill that takes you up from one level, and there's expectations of you to do X, Y, and Z. And I found myself teaching and then covering, a head of department who was off sick. And also my ego took control. Honestly, it really did. And suddenly I found myself as a course leader for a textile design degree, and an external examiner for, textile and fashion courses all over the country. And it was kind of like, when you see those things where someone's on a treadmill and they just can't quite keep up.
Yeah.
And that was me, and my life was that treadmill, but it was just going at a pace that I couldn't keep up with. I fell out of love with it, which is a shame, because I do miss that creative side very much. But I'm very fortunate now that I'm able to teach, as an outdoor education instructor. And I also teach at a couple of local colleges on their outdoor education courses. So I'm still able to sort of ignite that little bit within me. So
wonderful. So you had your breakdown, and luckily with NHS Time to Talk, did you say it was called?
Herefordshire, I think in Gloucestershire as well, they do a scheme called Let's Talk. So you can phone them up anytime, and they do education programs and refer you to counselling. And they and my GP were, my GP, bless him, he was brilliant. He would literally, I'd phone him in the morning and say, I'm not good, and he'd go, right, I've cleared 3 appointments, come in. And I'd sit there and just cry, and he'd just kind of look at me, and then at the end of it, he'd go, and how are you now? And I go, oh, much better. And so I can't fault. I mean, I feel very fortunate that I've got doctors and the support that I've had with the NHS. So,
fantastic. And crying is one of the body's sort of most natural ways of relieving stress, isn't it? Just to get it all out. Everyone feels better off with a good cry. So listen up, boys, have a good cry. Because for some reason, oh, sorry.
My son is 12 and he has anxiety, and so that's one thing that thankfully he still does, has a really good cry. So yeah, crying's amazing.
Yeah. And so you did your course, and you had some therapy as well alongside that. But how did you get into the mountain leading type you know, adventure training stuff that you're doing now? What did, I know you had that moment where you thought, oh, I am loving this, and you felt in alignment, but what happened then? Did you go and do a course, or?
Again, I was just really fortunate, because when we moved to where we live now in the Russell in the Wye Valley, my ex-husband and I, we both joined the local canoe club, because kayaking is something I've done since I was a very young child, and it's a lovely thing that we could do as a family. So I was already doing a little bit of sort of helping out with them anyway. So I started to do a little bit more coaching, and did my coaching qualification in canoeing through them, and they, you know, the canoe club supported me with that. And also I still know a couple of people, and through them they have instructors, and so I kind of got to know people who work in the industry.
Right.
And I was just incredibly fortunate that there were three key people, three men who stepped up and really supported me at that time. One of whom who owns an outdoor shop and used to be an outdoor instructor. He was like, you know, come in, anything I can do, come and talk, come and, you know, I can introduce you to lots of people. So he introduced me to lots of people, including this one guy, young guy called Joe, who really took a chance on me. And he looked at this 40-year-old woman who, you know, had experience of teaching and knew a little bit about the outdoors, and said, I'm going to give you a job. And so he put his neck on the line and gave me a job. And it was a high rope sort of zip line, climbing tower and archery little setup in the Forest of Dean. And his generosity and the time that he gave me, and he knew that I'd just come out of the breakdown and knew all this.
Yeah.
It was phenomenal. And then there was another guy who's a manager of an outdoor centre locally, and he did the same. He just said, so I was actually still signed off work at that point, and he just said, well, look, just come along and play, just have fun. He said, volunteer, because and just see what you think. And that was, you know, those three guys were the springboard kind of to the next step for me, because I suddenly found something I absolutely loved, and give me the opportunity to do more learning, which I've already said is something I love doing. And 3.5 years down the line, I'm now a mountain leader, which is, you know, there's a definite minority of women in that role.
Sure.
And I'm a canoeing instructor, climbing instructor, and I've got all my tickets and things for that.
Wow.
And then the complete irony is, when I was 13, I went on a outdoor activity holiday with my best friend for a weekend in the Brecon Beacons. And one of the instructors who ran that weekend for me and my friend, we went back to the same centre every year, and this instructor was at that centre every year. And this was in the days where we didn't have the mad safeguarding that we do now. So we were able to sort of get to know them a little bit better. So, you know, we know year on year, be like, oh, I wonder if Paul's going to be there. And me and my friend be like, oh, yeah, he's there. It's great. Well, I've just had an hour's meeting with Paul this morning, the guy who instructed me and took me up my first mountain at the age of 13. And he has just taken me on as one of his instructors.
Oh, wow.
It's come full circle. So,
Sure.
so it's all, I think, yeah, it's coming together. It's coming together.
It's funny, isn't it, how sometimes people you kind of come across in an insignificant way in the past suddenly come into your future in a very different way. I've actually had a conversation with a lady this morning who I spoke to randomly for a previous job, that I'm hoping to interview her for another episode. So yeah, it's funny how things sort of come around.
Yeah. So yeah, I think it's interesting actually, because obviously you never talk about, I mean, this is the first time I've kind of talked about me or anything with anyone other than my counsellor. and it's so good. I'm considering that February the 7th is time to talk, is, you know, all about mental health and getting people talking, which is only a couple of weeks away.
Yeah.
It is so true, because actually I think there is real value in talking about things that you've achieved, because you do then realize that actually I have done quite a bit.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, so it's just a realization there that it really is good to talk. So good to talk.
Definitely. And I don't think we give ourselves enough chance to actually, I mean, life's so fast paced now, isn't it? Everyone's always on to the next thing, and you've got to have a new photo for Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, and you're like constantly on the go, and you don't give yourself time to sort of reflect and see how far you've come and what you've achieved in that time. And I think our minds are sort of programmed to look for the next challenge rather than actually celebrating what we've already done. So therefore we forget, and then we get so caught up in the next challenge and trying to achieve it that we can get upset that it's not happening quick enough or that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's so ironic as well, because I had, being a course leader for a textile design degree, there were a lot of, you know, very creative, very artistic people, and it is statistically proved that, you know, that area does have a very high percentage of people with mental health issues. So I'd be dealing with students on a daily basis who had some really quite severe you know, issues going on and things, and I would always give them advice. So I'd always say things like, you know, write yourself 2 letters every day. You know, write yourself a letter that says, you know, dear, you know, whoever, today I've achieved X, Y, and Z, and I'm really happy that I've done this. And I thought it was lovely that so and so smiled at me and said that my top was nice. And then I said, and put that away and just put that in a box, and that's your happy letters. Then write yourself another one which has got all the things that you feel are negative about that day, all the things that made you feel sad or uncomfortable. I said, and then tear that letter up or screw it up and physically put it in the bin. And ironically, I've never ever done that myself.
Isn't that funny?
Isn't it? And I always think, my mum's always there and she's giving me all this advice, and I always say to my mum, and have you ever done that? She's like, no. So
that's the thing about advice, isn't it? It's so easy to dole out, but harder to sort of do yourself.
Yeah. It is, because you, like you said, life is so fast paced. And so much of what I do, sort of raising awareness of mental health and the outdoors, is social media based, which, like I said, is in itself a double-edged sword. I mean, I regularly take a week off where I just don't engage. It comes off my phone. I won't say that and I know a couple of my friends who you've already interviewed actually for this will raise their eyebrows at this and go, yeah, I know you were still checking it. So I do, but it is a very conscious thing. Social media can be really, really, really negative. And I know that that's now all coming through to do with mental health as well. Because it's so true, because so many people with social media will compare themselves to what someone's doing. And I think it's really important to remember that you don't compare yourself, your beginning, to someone else's middle or end.
Sure.
Because, you know, they may have been, you know, like halfway through their journey, and it's a journey that you're just starting. And actually, if you flip it, that person who is halfway on their journey or towards the end of a challenge that they've set themselves might be looking at you going, oh my God, I wish I was at the start of my challenge again. Or so yeah, social media can be quite twisted sometimes.
Do you think, I hope you don't mind me asking, but do you think when you're on that crazy treadmill, and you know, with all the different roles that you've taken on, and then do you think was there any inkling that you might be about to have a breakdown? Do you think that you kind of knew at all, or it just suddenly happened for you?
I think looking back on it, I could see the triggers. I hated school passionately. The end of August, beginning of September would always be my lowest time. then I went into design industry, and we didn't have that cyclical kind of academic cycle.
Yeah.
So then back into teaching, I then got back into that, and again it started again. That end of August time, that go back to school time, became a low point for me. So you know, back I can think, oh yeah, because that's when my my breakdown actually happened. I mean, if you're going to have a breakdown, you've got to do it in a glamorous place. So I was in Paris,
Oh gosh.
having a massive breakdown in the back of this incredibly posh car, having just been, I can't remember, where was I? I was at a meeting at one, I can't remember, it was some designer anyway, and I was on my way to a trade show, and I just had this massive panic attack. Which totally took me by surprise.
Right.
So the physicality, I think, of the breakdown took me, I had no idea it was coming, because I was just going about my business. I was in a beautiful city, you know, going to all these lovely places in my beautiful shoes. I had a big thing about shoes. And it was all lovely. So that did, but then having gone through the therapy and realizing what my triggers were, I don't think it should have come as a big surprise, but yeah, it was. And that, and then attacking Morrison's over yogurts. That was my other one. That was a good moment. That was. They didn't have strawberry yogurt, so I just burst into tears.
Oh.
You know,
But
normal.
it can be the smallest thing, can't it? That's where the saying comes from, I guess, the straw that broke the camel's back, you know. Yeah.
So, but yeah, and then this latest breakdown that I've just kind of come out of, that hasn't come as a surprise at all, because I'm going through a divorce at the moment, so separated from my husband, and so all that's going on, and I've got some physical health problems, hence all the calls from the doctor. So yeah, but I think that didn't come as a surprise when I started, and they said, no, you are, you know, in the process now of having another breakdown. I was like, right, okay, that's fine. I think what did come as a surprise to me this time one round was actually how dark it did get, because I'd never at any point thought about ending my life in any way. And although I know, even though when I was thinking it, I was thinking, well, you're not actually going to do this, are you? But just the fact I was thinking it was a huge surprise to me.
Sure.
So yeah.
And although this one was sort of different and darker, I feel like maybe you're a little bit better equipped to deal with, having gone through two before. Do you think you've had some coping mechanisms from the different?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, just having those 50, you know, that setting myself that limit, getting outside, is really important. I knew that yoga was fantastic, and so I've been going back and doing yoga and meditation, reading as well, just reading books that aren't to do with anxiety and depression. So, you know,
Right.
good old fashioned, you know, luckily a friend of mine's an author, and she this year released 2 books. So I've kind of been reading her 2 books kind of over and over, because they're just joyous. So yeah, so there are definitely techniques that I was able to engage with, and also this time round I was able to be really honest with people and actually say, okay, no, actually I'm not okay, this is really dark, this is really difficult, and this time round as well, I've also, I think, been able to be slightly selfish and say to people, actually what I really need from you right now is a hug, or what I really need right now is just for you to randomly, you know, at some point just send me a stupid image or a gif or a joke, or just tell me that you love me, or because it's those little sort of random acts of love, as I call them, when you're low, that you're not expecting, that are those little sparks of light. They're like the stars in the sky. They do. So I've been able just to be a little bit more selfish this time and go, actually, no, this is what I need. Please help. So
I love that. I love that you felt empowered to ask people for what you want, because I think quite often people worry about how to deal with it, how to be there for you in a meaningful way, and to know that a small text message here and there or something just to lighten your day can make all that difference.
Yeah, it does. And I do think actually, I think, and I do believe that everybody has ups and downs and dark moments and light moments. Obviously, mental health, so scientifically, is very difficult. Having clinical depression and being diagnosed with that, I think, is very different. And I think we've got a problem at the moment with society. The mental health's kind of starting to gain a bit of kudos, and there's people out there who are self-diagnosing, which I think could be slightly damaging. But I think it was actually dealing with a friend of mine who I've become very close with. He's become really interested in the whole side of mental health, and he's very, very, he's very questioning about it and what it's like. Because I think for people who haven't truly suffered with it or deal with it on a basis, it must be incredibly hard to know how to deal with someone. But it's the same, isn't it? I mean, I've got a friend who's who's recently been diagnosed with cancer, and she's actually okay. She's quite straightforward and matter of fact, because when you're going through it, you just get on with it. You just deal with it, and always it's the other people around. And I think this problem with mental health as well is because the trait of anxiety is that you do worry, so you spend your whole time thinking, oh my God, how are they dealing with it? And so I think having a little set of tools that you can pull out of your little toolkit that help you and help them is a really good thing to have.
Definitely. I feel like maybe they are now, as you say. I feel like they should be teaching this kind of stuff at school so that the kids have got mental resilience. Or they need to learn it when they're not on the edge. They need to learn it so that when things do get tough, they've got that, like you say, mental toolkit to draw on.
Definitely. I think they are certainly starting to do that now much more often. And I think the younger generation are so much more accepting of so many things, including mental health. A point in kind was when I started at an outdoor centre about a year ago. I was quite anxious about telling the younger lot. There were a couple of instructors. One was 17, one 18, one 21, and I was quite sort of anxious about saying, okay, so I have anxiety, I have depression, blah blah blah. And we actually had one of the instructors at the time, I'd not been there that long, actually committed suicide, which was a huge shock for us all. I didn't know him particularly well, but obviously the guys there knew him much better. And we were talking about the fact, and they were saying, we had no idea that he was, at this point. And I saw that as an opening, and I just said, would you believe me if I told you that I have anxiety and clinical depression? And they were like, whatever. And I went, well, I do. And they, oh, okay. And then the conversation just carried on. And I kind of had that moment where I was like, excuse me. Excuse me. But to them, it was just like, oh, okay, that's all right. That's cool. And they just took it on board and dealt with it, and have done ever since. Like, I've told them that I had a cold. So I think there is a real shift in that generation where mental health is being seen on a par with just physical health as well. And that was wonderful to see. And I see it with my daughter as well, who's 15, nearly 16. Her generation, they talk very, very openly about it. So it's getting there. It's getting there.
I was going to ask you as sort of a roundup question, what would your advice be to somebody that has just gone through a breakdown?
Wow. One day at a time, I think. When you're actually in the midst of it, another very good friend of mine who has mental health issues as well, he actually said to me when I was really low, he just went, oh, wait there. Sorry, just blank. He actually said, when you're at your lowest, he said, just think of 1 hour at a time.
Right.
Break it down into chunks. But I think it's really important to remember that tomorrow is another day. Tomorrow is another opportunity. And if you can, give yourself something each day that you can achieve. So at least when you are, in bed at night, even if you've been in bed all day, is to one, give yourself for that. That's fine. But maybe in that day, think to yourself, I'm going to go and be, just sit in the garden for 10 minutes or 15 minutes, obviously, would be better. So, yeah, I think just one day at a time. Ask for help. There's so many organisations out there that you can phone up, that you can talk to. And that's often all we need, is someone to listen to us babble on.
Sure, definitely. Oh, Ellie, thank you so much for sharing your story. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. So,
thank you. If you like this video, please do hit the like and subscribe button and you'll get notifications when new videos are uploaded. You can follow us on Twitter, Instagram and Facebook. If you search at Be Glad Movement, you should be able to find us. And if you have a story that you'd like to share, it doesn't matter if it's a story that's similar to somebody else's, because I really do believe your story and your voice has the ability to help someone in their time of need. Please do get in touch. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll look forward to seeing you in another episode. Many thanks.